Okay folks, so we've got our 50 caliber mountain rifle all put back together, oiled up, dried out, should be ready to go. Now, what we want to do is obviously we want to fire this weapon, but before we're going to load a ball down this barrel, we want to fire kind of a fouling load out of it just to make sure that it's going to function properly. What I mean by that is we're going to just put half of the load in. We're going to put a measure of powder in, about 3/4 of what I would normally use, and then we're going to just put a wad in front of that and then fire the wad out of the gun and nothing else to make sure everything functions properly. And the reason I'm doing that is if something doesn't function properly and I have to remove that load from the barrel of this gun, it's going to be a lot easier to do that if I don't have a ball in there. If I go jam a ball down the barrel of this rifle and I've got to pull the ball out, that's a whole different ball game than trying to just get a patch and wad and powder out of there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our rifle. We've got a powder measure in our kit here, and we're going to load it up with powder. And like I said, you know, we're not going to load this thing up completely. We're going to give it about a 3/4 load. So we'll dump that down the barrel. I always tap it a little bit as I go. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take a patch, and basically a patch just means that we're going to cut a piece of material that we carry with us that's been lubricated. And we're going to cut that off. Now, this material's been sitting on the shooting bag for a little while and it's not very well lubricated. So what I am going to do is I'm going to open up this tin that I have of fixin' wax, and I'm going to wax this patch really well before I shove it down. That's going to lubricate the barrel on the way down as well. So I'm going to do that before I shoot this fouling load out as well. Before I'd want to shoot a bullet out of this gun, I'm going to want to lube my patch as well, because it makes it a whole lot easier to load into the firearm in the end. And typically you'd be using this enough that your patch material wouldn't dry out. It would stay pretty well greasy. So we've got this greased up. And again, you know, we've got a fiber ramrod here. It's not a wooden ramrod. And for the 21st century long hunter mentality, that's not a big deal. If I were trying to get all period correct with this thing, I'd want a wooden ramrod. But the fact is, this ramrod is going to last a lot longer. It's got tips on both ends that you can put cleaning implements, things like that on, so it's not a bad ramrod. I may hang on to it for a little while. Now, I've got my load in the gun. I'll move this flash guard out of the way so you can see what we got going on. I'm going to put the gun on half cock, and I'm going to prime the pan. And I can prime the pan with the same powder that I'm using from my horn, but I carry a smaller horn with me that's generally got a finer grain powder in it that I use for priming. And all I really want to do is fill that divot up that's in the pan. And I showed that in a past video, how to do that. And then I'll shake a little bit of it toward the flash hole there, close the pan down, and we should be ready to test this thing out to see if we're going to get this fouling load to shoot out of this firearm. At this point, remember, we've got set trigger, so we're going to pull the hammer back to full cock. Once we pull on the back set trigger, now that trigger's set, and it's set for a very low poundage of pressure. So let's go ahead and try to shoot this fouling load and see what happens. Okay, now we know we're in the money. Now we know this thing's going to shoot beyond the shadow of a doubt. We're ready to load some ball ammunition in here. Okay guys, real quick, let's talk about one more thing that is beautiful about the Flintlock. First of all, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get our measure of powder set up so that we can shoot ball ammunition out of this gun. So we'll get our powder measure filled to the right capacity here. and I'm going to fill it about 3/4 of the way up. This is the same powder measure I use for my 20 gauge, which is 62 caliber. Generally speaking, you'd want to use about the same volume of powder that you're using that your caliber is. So a 50 caliber you'd start with about a 50 grain load, 62 caliber a 62 grain load, and so on and so forth. This is set up for a 62 caliber firearm, so I'm filling it about 3/4 of the way up for a 50 caliber. That'll be a good starting load. Now let's get this in here, and then let's talk for a minute about one of the things that's beautiful about this gun. This is a 50 caliber weapon. I do not have any 50 caliber round balls because I don't own any other 50 caliber guns. I do have 45 caliber balls, so that means they're going to be quite a bit smaller than this. So what I'm going to need to do is, to be able to make this thing shoot fairly well, is I'm going to take a fairly thick piece of patch and I'm going to double it up so that my normal patch thickness is doubled over. And I've got this thing nice and greasy now. And I'm going to double that patch over and put that ball in the patch with the sprue straight up. And the sprue is where you cut the ball off at. There's a little nipple on there where you cut that off in the mold. And if you probably saw that if you go back to some of my older videos that have us show making round ball, you'll see that. So now we're going to make this a little bit thicker so that when we put it in here, it will still run down the barrel, and that patching is what's going to catch in the rifling. So basically we're building around here. We'll go ahead and shove this down in the barrel. Get that all the way down next to the powder, just like that. Now we're ready to prime the pan and fire the weapon for real. So let's go set something up. Okay, so I've set up a target out here. I've zoomed in on it best I could. We're going to back up behind the camera to about 30 yards. And we're going to try to shoot this piece of round flat that we have that's a cut off from a stump. We got a light spot in the middle of it. That's what we'll aim at. And we'll see how this rifle does. Stand by. Okay. You can see we knocked this big chip out of it. So we're a little bit, well, I don't know. We were low, right, left. It's hard to say. I didn't pay much attention to what the orientation was of this thing, so we'll give it another shot. We'll clock it this time so we know where we're at. Just like that. Okay guys, there she is. Blowed in half. Alright guys, I appreciate you joining me for this video today on the Blue Ridge Mountain Rifle. Petrozzoli 50 caliber flintlock. I think we got her cleaned up and ready to rock and roll. Looks like she's in primo shape. She's hitting pretty well from a fairly short distance. We'll see how she does out 50, 60, 70 yards. But, you know, anywhere from 15 yards back to about 30. She's pretty close. Again, we're using a 45 caliber ball, which is actually about .43, and this is a .50 barrel. So we doubled over a heavy patch and lubed it up well with fixing wax. And as long as we get that patch tight in there, it's going to get in those grooves and spin that ball. But it's still not going to be as accurate as it should be, but it's close enough, and that's what counts when we're talking about gathering meat. Close enough counts for sure. So again, versatility of the flintlock weapon. I gotta have powder, but just about anything I can get down that barrel is going to come out the other end. Even if it's not exactly the right size ball, I can compensate for that somewhat. It just can't be too big. Right now, all I've got is a 45 caliber mold, so that's what I'm going to roll with. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for me, for my school, my family, all the Pathfinder affiliates. I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.